Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Reena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
All right, welcome back. Man, it's been a few weeks since we've sat here together, and so thank you listeners for being patient on this podcast. We've had all kinds of fun stuff come our way, so we're finally joining everybody in the new year, and we've got a really important topic to talk about today, specifically related to COVID, since that seems to be just the hot button issue again. But before we dive into that, I wanted to chat with you for just a minute about our chart audit. We have talked on the chart audit. We've kind of casually mentioned it through several podcasts, and I just wanted to let our listeners know that we're really passionate this year about making sure that we are supporting doctors with their charts and making sure that documentation is just up to par and that it's one of the worries that they don't have to think about. And so I wanted to tell our listeners about the chart audit program. So can you kind of fill in listeners on our chart audit program?
Yes, and I can't remember what we've said about it before, and I know you've had a lot of clients asking, y'all have mentioned this, what is it?
Yes.
And it's just something what you and I had an idea a couple of years ago, and just thought about how can we help going in, and I wish I had one for myself. Like, how can you have somebody that's making sure that whatever's in the chart note, treatment-wise, lines up to what's on the ledger, lines up to what's in the paperwork, because my fear always is if I get, when I was a Medicaid provider, if I get audited by Medicaid or by an insurance company or a patient complaint or whatever it may be, does my story match, and is my, are my chart notes basically the record of what happened? And in a he said, she said situation, which, knock on wood, I've not had it happen all too often, but, patients in the office that you told us this and you said this. No, sir, we did not. And luckily we've got a signature on file that shows clearly, or, it'll be a mom that will say, you all did this to my kid. Go back and look at the chart note. You weren't even in the building, lady. The dad's the one who brought the kid, and this is exactly what we told dad, and here's the document we sent home with dad. So plenty of those instances that have happened that I'm so grateful that we've got a record of what happened. So anyway, that's what the chart audit program is to kind of protect us from potential liability or issues like that. So, if a client signs on for a chart audit, then you punt it over to myself and my colleague, Dr. Kavita. Kavita has taught for years, so she knows what needs to go to a chart note because of her teachings when I was teaching and doing the chart notes with you. And through various groups that I help, I think we both have become very accustomed to digging through charts and kind of going in and giving our own feedback on what we think. And if I was, reading this for an insurance company, as a dentist, if an insurance company hired me to help with that, would this stand up, or are there inconsistencies that make it look like the dentist either did a bad job or did something shady? And so, again, our licenses depend on it. And it's one of the least glamorous things we get to do is go dig through our chart notes. And so we just felt like it was a very important thing to do and to offer. And so we were very happy to be able to help you, help your clients with that. So that's what the chart audit is.
Exactly. It's just, again, it's an outside person kind of doing a safety check on, are you, crossing all your T's and dotting on your I's. And it's one of those areas that I think dentists and practice owners maybe subliminally worry about, but it's not necessarily always at the forefront of their mind until it has to be at the forefront of their mind. If something happens or a patient complains or something like that happens, then all of a sudden we're worried about it. So I know you, Dr. Kavita, and I are really passionate about just making sure that we don't wait for something to happen to alert us to the importance of the cleanness of our chart notes and all of the documentation, not just the chart notes, but the ledger and x-rays and all of this. And so we put this program together. We are actually, you and Dr. Kavita thankfully agreed to do a really cool special at the start of this year to really encourage people to get their charts in check. So
I think that's very important at the beginning of the new year. With everything else we're dealing with. The last thing we need, I feel like people are crazy these days. Just COVID, what we're about to dive into, we're going crazy these days, and there's much opportunity to blame somebody else for one more thing. Like, people are so fragile right now, and so I think it's more than ever, now is the timing to stop and make sure you are protecting your own self. And if your charts are not in order, you are opening yourself up for problems. Now, I think in a time in society where stress is low and the economy is good and people have jobs and life is good, people tend to be more forgiving and less crazy. And we are not in that situation right now. So I know I am very hyper vigilant in my own office right now because of that very reason.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you really want to get a good extra set of eyes on your documentation and make sure that everything looks good from an outside perspective, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be happy to help you and make sure everything's up to par. Okay, so now that we've kind of crossed off the chart audit discussion, thank you for answering that question. I have had several people asking about that, so I'm glad that detail is out there now. Now we want to switch gears and dive into something that you personally are living through in your practice. And then as far as myself, I am living through it with every single client right now. And that is just this resurgence, not only of COVID, but it's just the resurgence of all of the problems that have come along with COVID. I feel like we're walking in this wake of, the only word that I can use to describe it without sounding overly dramatic is just despair. I mean, I feel like every client that I'm talking to is just like, we were walking towards kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. I just had a client say this to me yesterday. She said, I was walking towards the light at the end of the tunnel, and she said, now the light's behind me, and I don't know what I'm walking forward for.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely.
Right. Another client said, it feels like I'm just building sandcastles on the beach. And just everything that I try to build is destroyed by the end of the day. And so it's just this feeling of like, oh, here we are again. And I feel like we had this hope that started to build, like, okay, COVID is still here, but we're figuring it out. We're learning how to deal with it. And no, it's not perfect, but we're going to be fine. And then it's just, man, we're just this crushing wave after wave of like, gosh, we've got staff members out again. We've got patients canceling. We've got, what are we going to do? And there's not near as much hope this time than I feel like there was when this initially started, almost 2 years ago.
I would agree completely. I think when it started 2 years ago, we were all like, oh my gosh, the world, what's going on? And it was this real, like, we're in it together. And I remember, and I still say it, if I have to hear that phrase one more time, I'm going to vomit. Like, do not say that to me. We're in this together. No, we're not. I mean, we are. But you know what I mean? It's like, what does that mean? We're in it together and what? Like, now what? Okay, so we're in what together? What are we doing about it? So it just seemed like just words to me. And it was like, what is the point? Like, what is the action after that? And for a lot of people, there was no action. It was just, we're in this together. Okay, man, if that makes you feel good for you. But I need an action plan. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. And so it was like, what are we doing? And there was things to do. It was to apply for your PPP and figure out what to do with your staff and figure out, okay, I got to go find masks. Like, it was an action item and something I could do to make myself feel better. And I feel like this time around, the action items are like the answers or the options to answer the issue is dismal, and it's like one slam door after the next. And I feel like I'm being boxed in with like you said, with no light in sight. And then that feel good attitude, like, who knows, maybe I am wanting some of that positive fake cheer of we're in it together, because that's gone too. Like, yes. Like, I'm like, maybe I should have enjoyed that. We're in Yahoo, guys.
While it lasted.
We're here together, because I don't feel like there's any of that. I feel like we're all on our own islands. We're all trying to not sink. And it just seems more negative, negative this time around, myself included. And I'm trying to figure out, when did this happen? Because I feel like the summer was okay.
Yeah.
Like I felt hope in the summer. And I want to say even felt hope up through maybe even Halloween. Like it seemed like it was okay. So I don't know what's happened this last
2 or 3 months.
Yes. Yeah. And so I haven't even had the opportunity to stop and pause to figure out.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, again, with the Omicron stuff, and then is it the holidays maybe? Like the holidays make everybody crazy anyway. And then there was like travel and family, and then the family that judges you is judging you even more. And the family that's judging you in the different light is judging you in that way. Either you're too COVID crazy or not COVID crazy enough. Like it just seems like all of that came to a forefront. And then people being out on vacations and being out with their kids again. And it's just...
Yeah. It's never ending.
It's never ending, and there's no positivity, and maybe I want the positivity, and maybe I don't. Maybe if somebody came with the ray of positivity, I might just punch them. So maybe I don't want it. I don't know what I want anymore. All I know is that I don't know what to do anymore because I don't have a do this, and this will help this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the action items I do have are kind of bigger action items, and it's pushing me to, do I pull that cord? I didn't want to end up in that boat. So for example, we've talked about maybe dropping an insurance. I know we're about to get into that. Do I fire 2 more staff? Like I can't find staff. So if I'm going to really downsize my schedule, well, then that might mean I have to fire some staff because production changes. Like it's just, the choices I feel like I have are big game-changing choices.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I was there yet. Before it was the difference of, okay, what are my choices now? How can I do this? Get some gowns. And my biggest issue was disposable gowns that cost $1 million or washable gowns that are uncomfortable, but they're cheaper. Like that, those were my choices.
Well, they were small, tangible, and manageable.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I can figure out a game plan. And now it's like, you're exactly right. It's more permanent, long-term decisions that you feel like you're having to make in a very uncertain time that feels so much more consequential now. And I feel like everybody is walking in that. And you said something that I feel like is really important. You said it kind of feels like everybody's on an island. And I had a client this week that was describing something that I hadn't really thought about, specifically with his staff. There's been a school closed down, the daycare had to shut this classroom down, and this employee had to be off, and this one had to couldn't ask the mom to watch the kid because the mom is very concerned about COVID, and the kid was exposed and blah blah. And he said, you know what, it's really interesting because we used to always have somebody that we leaned on. So it's like, oh man, I'm really having a tough time. I've got my mom, or I've got my best friend, or I've got this person that I can really rely on when I'm feeling down or I need some help. And he said, but we're literally all in the same boat. There's nobody strong and in control, and everybody is struggling with something in their lives. So those little pillars of strength that you used to depend on are often no longer there. So I thought that was a really important discovery that he had really thought about, and I had not really thought about it to that level, where we used to have a support system, and even that support system is down as well right now. So I think that's the other component to it, that there's that personal aspect, and that may even come from judgmental family members, that now there's distance there, or there's contention there rather than the joy that we used to have in that relationship. So it's this professional struggle as well as this personal struggle. It's just every facet of life.
Everything's hit ahead. Everything's hit ahead. And so, where's the safety net? And the plan B is no longer the plan B. And now we're trying to figure out plan G, because everyone in between has knocked down like wildfire too. So it is this very gloom and doom scenario.
Yeah. And I feel like, a lot of times in our podcast, we have come with very real solutions. And I think today is hopefully going to feel different to our listeners, because you and I are just talking through this. Like we started to dive into this conversation right before we started recording. We're like, nope, we're going to unfold this right here, on the podcast. So for those listening, just know that again, one of our goals is to always make you guys feel like you're not alone. And I hope this real talk really allows that to happen. But also, one of the things that I love about our conversations, even off the podcast, is we normally come to some type of solution. So we'll talk through some things today and just see how you've kind of dealt with some issues. This first segment on this COVID resurgence, I really want to focus on the staffing side of it. There is a patient side of it as well that is causing a lot of drama for doctors, but we'll focus on that in the next episode. So just as you and I talk today, we'll focus more on the staffing side of it.
And I'm glad you're saying too that we may not have a strong solution. And I had a colleague of mine say, "Oh, well, don't you have all the solutions? Like you don't," because I was venting about how shorthanded we've been and how we're just tired.
Yeah.
And I'm really fearful of all the weight we're putting on the ones that are there. And in my mind, it's not a when are you going to crack, or excuse me, not a if you're going to crack, it's when you're going to crack. So it's like I'm even trying to stay on top of that before my pillars,
Yeah.
you were talking about pillars in our private lives, with my pillars in the office before they crumble.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we don't get to that complete burnout level for them. And so anyway, this colleague was like, well, the podcast. I was like, dude, the podcast doesn't mean I have figured anything out. Like if that was your impression, I have conveyed something very wrong. The podcast is me sharing my dirty laundry and what you have guided me along the way. But it's really just to kind of like you just said, if anybody relates at all, and maybe hearing one thing makes you view something else in your own world and makes you go, okay, well, yeah, Kuba's solution, that's not going to work for me. Or Kuba's solution was a dumb solution, whichever way it is, but it makes you go, aha,
yeah,
here's my own solution for my own problem that is going to work.
Right.
Great. That's the whole point, is just talking, venting, and trying to brainstorm together.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's going, how do we turn something negative, even if we can get one sliver of a positive out of it. And I wish you and I had the power in a podcast to be able to change the gloom and doom world, and just all of a sudden somebody listens to this and it's like, there's all my answers and it's solved. I would love if we had that power, but we don't. We've got our honesty and we've got the ability to talk through it, and then hopefully somebody can gain something, even if it's a sliver of positive out of it. If nothing else, hopefully you feel like you're not alone, listeners, as you
or you feel like you're smarter than somebody. Yeah, like that Kuba. I don't know what she's doing over there, but at least I'm not in that boat, dum-dum. So even if you gain confidence in your own self, going, at least I'm not heard, then there you go. There's your sliver of move forward with that in the world.
So tell us, I know I already know some of this, so tell listeners what are some of the staffing issues that have come up just over the last few months for you.
So I think, I've kind of, it's all happening so fast. And again, with the holidays and this and that, like to even keep track of a timeline anymore, I don't know. But I guess I will start with, because this is the one, and I did not see it coming 2 weeks before Christmas. And I think the issues we were having at that point were, one team member was going to be out for 2+ weeks that she had put in a request for, but it was still creating drama for whatever reasons it was, just knowing that we were going to be shorthanded and what are we doing with the schedule, etc. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but I remember thinking, I'm tired, but we made it through another week. Yeah. Like that was my mindset. And sure enough, as I'm thinking that and just going, okay, here we go into the weekend, I always, we have walkie-talkies in the office, whatever, the headset things. And I said something like, hey guys, I'm about to leave in the next couple of minutes. If y'all need me for anything, come find me. So that's how I always, before I leave for the day, that's what I do. If there was something I didn't sign or something I forgot, whatever it is. And so one of my assistants comes in and she's like, oh yeah, I needed to talk to you. And, I can't stand when the staff does that when I'm needing to leave. It's like, why didn't I have a heads up? But whatever. She comes in and is like making no eye contact. And I, just kind of look at her. I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, well, I'm moving. Like she used some, vague wording like that. So you're moving. What do you mean? And she's like, well, this is my 2 weeks. And Bethany, it was kind of a bittersweet moment, honestly, because she's an employee that we've had on and off for the last 3 years, and she has been very draining emotionally. Now, if I were to go strictly off of, is she a good employee and should we keep her? Most people on the outside are like, why is she still hired here?
Yeah.
And so I've always had to kind of go back over, why is she hired here? And just one of those employees that has a world of home life stuff. And I think part of me is going, I don't live that life every day, so I don't want to judge and comment on that.
Right.
All I can say is I commend you for pulling through and trying to keep a job, try to make a paycheck. And what I liked about her, so I liked that fighting spirit, because she is certainly the underdog, and wanting to watch the underdog win was always in my brain. Knowing that the office family was a good support for her. And so it shouldn't become my problem, but I know she has no support at home, but I know the girls at the office rally around her, were good role models for her. And she comes to work, or when she comes to work,
That's the
when she comes to work, she's no at drama. Like she hits her nose to the ground, works. She's not afraid to work. She will do anything you ask her to do. And she takes criticism very well. All of that to say, she was never the highest paid employee because of all of the other issues that a weaker assistant, carries with them.
Right.
Terrible chart notes, terrible sense of communication, unreliable, all those things. So anyway, so we had been I think the majority of people would look at me and say, why is she still even hired? But again, me
she had
thinking,
enough redeeming qualities
in my mind, and me who likes to quote think outside the box was trying to make it work for a while. And I mean the team loved her, which speaks volumes, because usually somebody's kind of unreliable, usually the team has had enough.
And even at one point you let them make the choice of whether or not to keep her on the team.
That was as soon as back in August,
something
like
August,
that.
September,
August, September, June, something like that. It wasn't too far in the past, and I kind of said, ladies, what do y'all want to do? Like, it's up to you. And they preferred to keep her. They liked her around. So anyway, all of that to fast forward, and so here she is. And of all the people on the team, like, she's probably the last one I would see resigning. And the reason for that is because she knew how well she was treated in our office and how many times we had taken a chance on her. So for me, if the world was caving, she's the last one I thought would ever leave. Like, I thought her loyalty. So it floored me to hear she was giving her 2 weeks. And so I just didn't know how to feel about it. To be honest, it kind of was a relief because all the things that I worried about from a liability standpoint, because she was a walking liability, but that was gone now. And then I'm not the one who had to fire her and feel bad about it. So all of those things were definitely positives. On the downside, the biggest negatives were my hurt feelings. That you chose somebody else over me. And then the next one was, what are we going to do? We are severely shorthanded. So, and I always go back and forth over, I don't want to just keep bad employees around because we're shorthanded, because ultimately they do create more work. On the other hand, where's this unicorn employee going to come from?
Right.
And so, but I didn't really have a choice here. In a way, she kind of made it easy for me because she put in her 2 weeks. So I didn't know if at that point I was supposed to beg her or offer to pay her more or do whatever. I did consider it, but ultimately opted no. And so when I, kind of asked her what it was, she said that, she was getting paid a lot more, significantly more hourly. Well, the sad thing is, on the face value, she is, her hourly amount. But in terms of all the perks and bonuses and things, she's kind of making out even. But more to the point, I think for her instability, she could sense her instability was starting again. And so a part of that, like, for example, her car. She didn't live particularly close to the office, 45 minutes. And so I think between her mom, and her dad, they all share the same car. And apparently whatever was going on in her world, that was going to start up again. And so she said to me, I'd never want to be fired by you. And she's like, because we've made such a big deal over the last, 4 or 5 months, because she's had multiple issues over the last 4 or 5 months. that she said, I don't want to be fired. I want to make sure that once I'm stable and in a position that I still keep a door open here. Mm-hmm. Should I want it in the future and should you need me in the future? But I know if I was fired, that would be it. And you know what? If nothing else, I was so proud of her for thinking ahead in that. If nothing else, if I've not taught her anything else, I've taught her to think about consequences and about long term.
Yeah.
So I was proud of her for that. But in the end then, so we parted ways kindly. It was a nice parting. But now we're down to 2 assistants.
Yeah.
And then one of the assistants got COVID. So then she was out. And then we had a day, it was either last week or the week before. And it literally was, I come to work. It was probably the week before because it was still vacation.
Yeah.
So we knew we were going to be busy. And so we had the one front desk who's still on her vacation. We had another one who works remotely, but she had a doctor's appointment, so she was not going to be available till 9 o'clock. Well, we started at 7:15.
Yeah.
So, and the mornings are a busy slot, so she wasn't around. We had another one that had a death in the family, so she was off. So we had one front desk person, and she's the newest one, by the way, to our team. She's been new to dental for 4 months now?
Yeah, very new.
So she was running the front desk on this busy day. Then in the back, we have the one hygienist who doesn't come in till later, the other one who had a maternity appointment. So we have one hygienist who's gimping around on her one surgery leg. And then we had the one assistant and me.
Yeah.
So normally where there's about 9 of us.
Yeah.
There were
4.
3 plus the newbie, if we're going to count.
If we're going to count. If we're going to count.
And we just looked at each other. We were like, all right, well, we're it. And I think it was funny. We made it through the day. We managed just fine. And it is one of those things where you do say a lot of times, am I overstaffed? Because people tend to putz when there's more people around. And here it was like, there was no time for putzing or anything. It was like you had to be on point, on focus the whole day. And we did it and it was fine. Dare I say, almost enjoyable. At one point, I kind of was like, it's kind of nice that the people that I have here, you are right there watching what's unfolding. So there's no game of operator.
Yeah.
And so it's like I had to tell you one time and you saw it because you were right there versus normally you're at the front desk and you're not paying attention to what's going on or you're over here or you're over there. So it's almost like it took out a couple of middlemen. Mm-hmm. So in a way that was nice, but I was like, this is not sustainable.
Right.
We were run ragged by the end of the day. And I think for me, the point that really concerned me or weighed on me was, I don't see this getting better anytime soon.
Yeah.
It was just another reminder of people are allowed to take vacations. People are going to have deaths in the family. People are going to have kids that are out sick. People are still getting pregnant. All of those things that I was like, today was just a day where it all happened to hit the same day. Some of it was predicted, like the one that we knew was going to be out or coming in late or had our maternity appointment, but we were still counting on 3 more people being there that day that weren't able to come in.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this what the next year is going to look like? Mm-hmm. That we are constantly trying to figure out a game plan. And I just had this moment of, I don't know if I want to do this. Is the joy still there? What is the joy again? And am I going to ever get time to go back to that? Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that the loss of any kind of control, I think that's where it starts hitting people is it's almost like we have our plan A and it's like, okay, most days plan A works, but you know what? On the days that plan A doesn't work, we've got plan B and that's going to work. So if we can't do plan A, then we can always do plan B. And it's almost like now first of all, there is no plan. Because we don't know what in the heck we're getting on a daily basis, And then second of all, it's that feeling of, one domino is going to fall and they're all going to fall. And then how do you solve just mass chaos? And when is mass chaos going to hit? And it's almost like even on the good days, you're like, oh, something's going to go wrong at some point. It's almost like it's almost like PTSD, that so much crap has happened that it's almost like we're just tensed up just waiting for something else to happen.
And with limited resources or solutions to solve it. And
yes.
Because I think as dentists, as practice owners, we are used to something's going to happen today.
Yeah.
Like, and we're used to pivoting and going, okay, solved it. Okay, this is what, and I feel like, I don't feel like that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm at a point right now where I'm like, I don't have another option.
Yeah.
And I don't like being in that. I don't like being backed up like that. And like you said, the lack of control. I think most of us as business owners, the whole reason we are business owners is to be able to control
Yes.
our destinies and our days and our visions and all of that. And so you take that away and it's like, well, then what am I doing?
Right.
And so it is, it's like, I think business owners, we're used to being the comeback kid, the kid with the 9 lives, the comeback claws a scratching. We're going to make it through this. But I just feel like, I don't know, the wall I've got to climb to get myself out of this pit has grown so much taller, or my nails are so much less sharp. Like, I don't know what the analogy is here, but I just feel like I'm tired. And, you'd think we'd all be used to COVID and moved on by now. So I'm just annoyed that I'm still annoyed by it. Like, I'm just still, I'm so tired of it. And yet it's still much of the same. And I'm just ready for it not to be the same.
Yeah.
Like,
different
one way or the other, but just.
Well, and it's almost like, again, we powered up when it first hit. It's like, all right. Kicked it into high gear. That control came in, and we're like, all right, we got some hurdles, and we're gonna solve them. It was such just problem solving, right, back to back to back, and then it felt like we got to a place where it's like, all right, it's still not back to normal by any means, but this feels manageable. Like we're gonna be able to make it. And then, man, it just shifted. And
what shifted? What happened? What happened in October? Where did I miss?
I really feel like it was the Omicron resurgence, at least in Texas. And I don't know, too much outside of Texas. But for me, that's when it really started hitting for a lot of my clients. Is all of a sudden they had more staff members getting COVID, so that created an issue. They had schedules that started just falling apart, and
because all the patients are getting
all the patients are getting in exposed. I really feel like that's the only thing that I can sense that changed. I also feel like for whatever reason, the exterior world just got extra negative for some reason. I feel like that line between vaccinated and masked or non-vaccinated and non-masked, this division and this outside, this family judgment and I felt like the tension just got ramped up. And the only thing I can pin it on is Omicron, because I feel like really the last 2 months, kind of mid-November to now, that everybody's just walking in the thick of it. And you're right, maybe holidays being thrown in there is just an extra added stress, and especially after the holidays, specifically Christmas break. But I feel like every call I'm on or every visit I'm in, it's just deflated owners that are having staff members that are out and patients that are, falling apart, or they've brought in a temp. They knew an employee was going to be out. They've brought in a temp and paid astronomical temp fees. And then the temp walks into a day that absolutely is obliterated because everybody has COVID, on the schedule that day. So that's the only thing that I can pin it on is the Omicron resurgence.
So then I'm going to go with, that actually makes me feel better that you say that, because to me there is going to be an end to that. Mm-hmm. There is. And so whether that might come, what are we now, mid-January? So if that's maybe by spring break and the weather gets better.
Yeah.
Of course, they're predicting all these snowstorms and so it might get worse before it gets better, I suppose. But the fact that if it truly is the Omicron, like you're saying, and that does make sense, because people already had vacations lined up or this lined up, and all of the family tension, holiday stuff. And then you tailspin it with something where we're all sick and not able to. I mean, that's why we haven't had a podcast in so long.
Yeah.
Because COVID hit my kid. Yeah. What was that? Right when break hit.
Yeah.
It was literally the first day of break, and then now you're dealing with it in your house. And and so, we're living it right now, literally not being able to see each other to record.
Well, and I think it's important to kind of put a face to what we're walking through, which is, as far as I can tell, it's this Omicron resurgence that is really just hitting everybody. But I think also recognizing that we're walking into this spike so much more fatigued. than we were the first time. So I almost think about it like a long marathon. It's like everybody's been running, and marathons are hard, and man, you're just clawing at that finish line, and it's almost like we got to a point that we could see the finish line, and it's like I'm a mile away. Like,
and it was a mirage.
And then we get there and it's gone. It's like, what finish line? There's not you mean there's more running to do?
It's a 35-mile marathon, not 26, sucker. Keep going, you fool. This is why I don't run, because I don't care for this.
I really feel like that's the feeling that we can't quite, get our hands around. So...
But that does make me feel better. Like, if it truly is, like, you just move the finish line, but I know there is a finish line.
Right.
I will be better. And you're right. Omicron's got to go away at some point. Like, when I go back and think, was summer bad, or did I fool myself over this summer? No, summer was good. Summer, I think that's what it was. It was so hopeful.
Yeah.
Patients were there. We were busy. We were all hands on deck. It was good. Right. And it's like, did I just fool myself? Like, how could it go from so good to so bad all of a sudden? Like, so good meaning like it felt back to normal. Because it's so easy to get distracted and not, there's a lot that we're all juggling. I feel like that's always the norm. And so now we're past all of that, but I'm just exhausted.
Yes.
Mentally, physically, emotionally. But knowing that if it was Omicron, then that is going to go away and hopefully get back to some semblance of normalcy. Like, I will still stay in the race in that case. And so it's nice to, if indeed it is, that's the face of this, then that makes me feel better.
And I do feel like that. I think it's hard to sense it in the moment. When we're in the moment, and again, every client, I can't even tell you, every single client of mine is just like this deflation right now. And so I think when you're in that feeling of, like we've talked about, getting to you think you're at the finish line and you're like, oh crap, I've still got more miles to run, and it's just like I can't do it. I think if we'll pause and recognize we're feeling that way right now because we're in another negative bubble, right? Like, this Omicron is spiking. That's impacting our staff. That's impacting the kids' school. That's impacting our patients. But as we've seen, if there's anything predictable, every spike, there is a downturn that eventually comes, that I do think we have that to look forward to. And if we can think about that in the moment and go, yes, I am having to run further, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to have to just continue to run at the same pace, that there will be, I believe, a relaxing of that again. And it is kind of powering ourselves back up to go, you know what, I got what it takes. I really do. I had what it takes 2 years ago. I powered through then. And yeah, the problems are a little bit different now, but I've lived through this once before. I can do this again. And it's not going to be a 2-year thing. This is going to be a short period of time again.
So it's funny you say that, because I'm divided, because half of me is like, yeah, you're right. And yeah, it's going to have to come down. It can't keep going up. And then, so now it's Omicron, and then, in March it's going to be Zomicron, and then it's gonna, there's always gonna be something coming up. And so, but knowing that it's gonna ebb and flow and not just stay at one thing, there will be back to like how summer was nice and up and down. And so I've done it, and yes, like, I think right now until this very conversation, I was just like, I don't even know when this hit.
Yeah.
And how am I going to get myself out of this funk? Like, is it just me that's in this funk? And again, like I said, making those decisions, like, I'm about to go this or this, and those are going to be big dramatic decisions. And wait, you're right. If this is going to see itself out, if I'm just patient for another 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, then, and I get through it. And I can do that. I can do that. Like, okay, don't make any dramatic moves at the moment. And so I'm glad we're having this conversation. This is why I always lean to you, because I tend to be like, this is it. And so, yeah, you're right. It's not. And so before I make a big, bold move that might potentially be a dumb move, maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe I do. I don't know.
Well, and I would say on that note, because that's been a part of our relationship for years now, is you hit these walls, and I think every practice owner does, but you hit these walls where you're like, I'm done. Like, I'm so tired. And in those moments, my advice to you has normally been, wait, let your emotions rebound, pause and think about this, because oftentimes when we're in those I'm done moments, we can make, practice altering, life altering decisions that we're making in a stressful moment or in a moment where our feelings are down about things. And so what I've noticed in just human behavior is feelings are often cyclical. We've got our highs and we've got our lows. There's very few people out there that are just even Steven. There are people, but there's very few people that function in life that way. So I would say my encouragement to you has always been that. My encouragement to listeners right now, just first of all, know that you're not alone. Everybody's feeling deflated right now. Hold steady. Just hold steady and wait for this stressful bubble that we're all in to kind of die down. Make decisions. And we talked about this maybe a couple years ago, where I said to you, I want you to, you're like, maybe I need to sell, maybe I just need to get out. And I said, I want you to make that decision when you are happy in your practice. When you're like, man, things are going good, I love it. That's when really you should make a change, is when you're like, I love this enough that I'm making a clear-headed decision. I love this practice. And I'm willing to walk away from it because of, it's nothing emotional. It's all logical, because I need more time, because I want to spend more time with my kids, because my, parents are getting older and now's my time to not work for a while. Like, when the practice is going well, that's when we really need to make these big decisions. To me, it's very risky. There's a regret factor that can happen if we make that decision where we're like, oh gosh, I hate this practice today. And then we divorce it and we're like, well, crap, I guess it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, So that would be my advice to anybody
And
listening.
I think for me, where I've also loved your feedback or your coaching or whatever it is because I don't even know I'm in that funk.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so in it that I don't even realize I'm in it.
Yeah.
Now, you did say a minute ago, I said 50-50. 50% of me is like, okay, I feel so much better because I know if it really was this Omicron, because I can't remember being happy and it feeling good. Like, it's been so stressful recently that I just can't remember. And now that we're talking about it, I'm like, no, it was fine until around here. And so that makes me feel better that is going to peak and come back and whatever. The other 50% kind of says what you said just now. Part of me goes, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I know, again, anybody listening who's a practice owner and heck has even gone through dental school, like, didn't we all, like, my time was that, what was it? The Destiny's Child, I'm a survivor, I'm gonna make it. And it's like, that was kind of like the theme song, like, I'm gonna get out of this school and graduate, man. I'm gonna do it. And so I know we all can. We've all been through all of these tough things. And so I know we can, and it's back to, but do I want to?
Yes.
And so,
and I think that's that goes back to so much that we've talked about with the why.
I wish there was a podcast out there on this. Why am I'm going to go find me one.
Hint, episode 4.
I may need to go back and listen to episode 4.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yeah. Feed yourself that same information, because it doesn't mean that getting out of a practice ownership position is the wrong decision. It just means it should fit with your why, your foundational why, your purpose, what drives you, what fulfills you. And I think it's good. It's a good thing to go back and reevaluate that, even in the stressful moments. So just go, you know what? I know the good times are really fulfilling. I know the bad times are really draining. But overall, is this still fitting my purpose and my why I get up and why I do what I do every day? And I think it's a very valuable question to ask.
I think especially when it's negative.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Is it worth it? That's the question.
Is it worth it? And then going back and going, okay, but if not, like, what if my why was to help people exercise? Well, how am I going to do, if I get out of this now, what is my avenue for achieving that then? And maybe that's like, oh, well, I better stick to this now because it's going to be hard to do that.
Yeah. This is the best avenue for achieving my why, or it's not. Right? And so I think that's a very important takeaway in this. I would also say to this team that I was in, again, just the team's deflated. They've had a lot of staff issues, you name it. it's happened. And so I played this video for them. Good old Steve Harvey. I love Steve Harvey. And he's got a whole talk on the blessings of stress. But I played this one little 8-minute segment. They had pulled out kind of his best little segments in there. And he gave this analogy that I thought was really good. And it reminded me of one of our previous episodes about bearing fruit. And so he talked about how, the stress of life can be equated to just dirt, just dirt being thrown on you. He said it always hits him that, to grow, for a tree to grow, a seed has to go into the ground. It's buried under a bunch of dirt. And then over time, it sprouts into this tree and eventually bears fruit. But he was like, you're in the ground. You're buried in the ground with dirt. But he said he equated that to stress. And he was like, you know what? Stress is like the dirt in life. He said they don't call it dirt when they're planting it. They call it soil. Why? Because soil is nutrients. And I was like, that is so good, Steve Harvey. You're so good. But anyway, it really was a powerful analogy as I was listening to it, because I feel like that's what all of my clients are walking through right now. Is it feels like you are buried 10 feet deep in the dirt, and you're like, how is this going to produce anything? But it's for a period of time that you're in the ground, and there is growth that can happen out of that. There are positive things that can occur.
There's fruit.
There's fruit to be had, for sure. And I think that is what we're walking in right now. And we've got to figure out, we've got to have that hope that, you know what, even though it feels really dark and dirty in this hole right now, that if we can use that to go, you know what, there is a blessing here in this stressful time, and I can bear fruit out of that. But I think that takes hitting the pause button and going, how am I going to not only survive this season, but come out with fruit that I've learned and grown in that process.
I like it.
There we go. Good old Steve Harvey and you are on the same page with bearing fruit. So, it's pretty good.
I do love Steve Harvey.
So, any other thoughts that you would have on just kind of the COVID resurgence, and as far as hitting your staff, any other words of advice that you would leave for listeners?
I think, again, just trying to be as creative as you can with the scheduling. I know a lot of docs don't like to do their own scaling. Mm-hmm. Some have no idea how to do sterile. I think those are saving graces for me and my team that I've been able to, I was an assistant when I was in dental school and all of that. So the basics of, I was a terrible dental assistant, but I knew how to process instruments and do all of that. And so being able to, especially that day when there were 3 of us, keep the flow moving. And so, if you're one who you're like, no, I draw the line at, turning around rooms. For me, I draw the line at getting my own patient and taking x-rays. I just don't want to do it. I don't want to be the one to have to go out there and bring the kid back and take vitals and do all of that stuff. So that's where I'm drawing my line.
Right.
But I don't mind, turning around rooms. I don't mind. So you may have to be it.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that, other than keeping the flow going, the team was super appreciative.
Right.
And so when they are at their low and they're like, even the boss is getting in here and helping us on the ground, it really does bring in that camaraderie feeling.
Yeah. And I would say that's a good strategy that I've really been talking with a lot of clients about. The more we can create option after option after option. So if we've got, sweet little Sally at the front that always only has ever known how to answer phones and greet patients, well, it's time that sweet little Sally gets some more skills. And maybe that's sweet little Sally only knows how to flip a room, but you know what? That's going to be helpful. And maybe sweet little Sally learns how to process instruments, and that's going to be helpful. So as much as we can create cross-training between front and back, again, a session I had this week, we were talking about how to answer the phone with the whole team, because we didn't know who was going to be pulled to the front because of situations that their front desk team was having. And so the more we can really get out in front of it, and we don't necessarily have a very clear plan B. If Sally is out, then Susan is going to step in. It may not be that clear. It may just mean, hey, we know that at some point Sally's going to be out, but we've had a team meeting on how somebody can step in. Anybody on the team can ultimately step in and at least get by for the 2 weeks that Sally's going to have to be out because her kid's school is closed. So,
and I would make a point to say, make sure you extend grace.
Yes.
Because a lot of times those people don't want to step out of those roles because they are uncomfortable and they're afraid they're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And all of that. So that's one thing I've had to remind myself and my team leads to say, look, this person was doing something that is not in her normal scope. And if we pounce on her, she's out.
Right. Right.
And so we need to recognize that it was the effort and the trying and that it's not going to be perfect. And frankly, there may be more work for us on the tail end to fix whatever. But as long as that's an expected, we expect that to happen.
Yeah.
So it is the managing of, that side of it too.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Create as many options as you can and then have grace in those options, because none of the options are going to be perfect, because we really are on option X, Y, and Z. We're at the bottom of the barrel. And so we have to recognize that those options aren't going to be perfect, and that's okay. As long as it helps us to get through the day, then it's a good option for right now. So, well, awesome. Hey, thanks for airing your dirty laundry. This is like this is how our conversations go. So I'm glad that listeners were able to kind of hear your heart on what you're going through. And we certainly are encouraging all of you to use this time to, do what you can. I know you're in the dirt. You got lots of soil around you, but hopefully this leads to bearing fruit in the very near future.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.